This is getting ridiculous. KU lands another commitment in the class of 2026. It's another good one. Davion Adkins, one of the best centers in the class of 2026, will be joining the Jayhawks.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. A little bonus episode for you as Davion Adkins is the newest future member, I guess you would say, of the Kansas Jayhawks. What a week it has been. It's been a week. Last Sunday, Taylen Kinney, the 5-star point guard, commits to KU. Then earlier this week, they get a 4-star commit, and now they get another 4-star commit in Davion Adkins, who is one of the 5 best centers, one of the 3 best centers in the class of 2026. And could he be the Flory Bidunga replacement for KU? We're going to break down his game, what he brings to the table, what this means, look at next year's roster, and the future of the center position for KU on today's bonus episode of the show. But let's start right there. The news is Davion Adkins. He's a 4-star recruit, top 35 overall ranked recruit in the class of 2026. And again, top 5 ranked center in the class. He's committed to Kansas and Bill Self for the 2026 season. You look at it, he kind of will remind you in terms of certain things. Again, we'll get more of his scouting report in game, but I think some similarities and between his game and Flory Bidunga's game. He's 6'9", 205 pounds, really long arms. So he's originally from Dallas, Texas, and he plays now in Florida, I believe, for Prolific Prep. And he chose KU over Houston and Rutgers. And that on its own I don't know, I find it very interesting, this specifically the Houston one, and winning over this, because winning him over Houston is a big part of this as well. Like getting Davion Adkins, no matter who you were going up against, was going to be, important and also a great get for KU, regardless who you went up against. But it becomes even a bigger deal to me that you get him over Houston from the standpoint of, that's one of the top teams you're competing with. They've won the Big 12 the last 2 years in your own conference. So winning a recruit against them is obviously important, but also I find it interesting in terms of when you look at like what Houston has had success with from the big man spot. It is big men who maybe they're not 7 feet tall, maybe they're 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", but they have really long arms and they do a lot of, good defensive things and rebounding things. And I think that'll tell you a little bit about Adkins' game, just the fact that, Houston was looking to kind of keep him in that line of players that they've had so much success with there. But now Adkins becomes the 3rd commit in this week for KU. Again, Taylen Kinney, the number 1 center. You now have the number 1 point guard, the number 3 center now in Adkins, and then Trent Perry, who's kind of your 4-star wing to add on to the class here. It is already a pretty loaded class for KU. Like in today's day and age with the transfer portal, if you just finished up with this class today, we have the number 1 center, the number 1 point guard, the number 3 center, and another 4-star recruit who we think we can try to develop into something, and then we're going to hit the portal hard. That would already be a great starting point for KU. But that's the crazy thing, is that it doesn't feel like it's done yet. KU is still going after other players. They're still having other players visits. They've already had some players, unique players visit. They're still trying to close on, maybe another big time player up top. This has the chance to be a very special class for KU. And now you found your center with Davion Adkins. And certainly it seemed like, KU kind of going between Ethan Taylor and Davion Adkins. Now, I'd imagine if you're KU, like if Ethan Taylor still would want to come to KU and you have even more talent, like great, that's a good problem to have. But just from a standpoint of like how are you using your money and what would Ethan Taylor want? Like, is he going to want to come into that situation? It does seem like KU kind of chose Adkins over Taylor in that regard. Okay, let's get to Davion Adkins' scouting report and the future of the center position and next year's roster for KU basketball. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There's moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. And you know what? We're going to make this week's moment to move the game forward this commitment that we're talking about today with Davion Adkins. In fact, we can pick one of the other commitments too. Let's just go back and pick the Taylen Kinney commitment, because if we're talking about moving the game forward, you're talking about the future. You're talking about bringing more players aboard. And it feels like Taylen Kinney opened the floodgates for all these commitments to come in to KU and to start headlining things. So now you have 3 recruits, 3 commits in a week. That really moved the game forward for KU. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can make Locked On College Football your second listen every day. And don't forget to check out all of our normal shows right here with Locked On Jayhawks. You can check out our Trent Perry commitment episode. You can check out our Taylen Kinney commitment episode. You can check out our KU football content, all right here with Locked On Jayhawks. So Adkins comes in. He is a 6'9" center, which I made, some comparisons, and I won't be the last one to make comparisons to Flory Bidunga's game, but he has I guess it depends where you look. He's had 3 different measurements of what I can see, 3 different events that he measured at from 2024. All of them had him between like a 7'2" wingspan and a 7'3" wingspan. There was like a 7'2", there was like a 7'2" and change, there was like a 7'3". So basically somewhere between a 7'2" and 7'3" wingspan, which I think actually is like right at what Flory is. I think Flory is in the 6'9" is in shoes. I think Flory's 6'9" in shoes with like a 7'2" wingspan. So very identical there. He is the number 3 center in both the class on 24/7 Sports and the 247 composite, which also ranks him as the number 30 overall player, which comes to mind for me, like when I think of a couple KU centers who were right around that 30 mark. I don't know that they were exactly 30, but I think Udoka was like around 28, 30, and I think Dave was right around there too. So that obviously worked out in both those situations for KU. From what I saw and watching, different highlight reels for Adkins, the aggression in going for offensive rebounds, the long limbs combined with kind of that springiness and the want to on the offensive glass, he is, and he's going to be at the collegiate level, an awesome offensive rebounder. I think that the question is going to be, when you look at some of his rebounding numbers, you might say, okay, he's a good offensive rebounder. Why is it closer to 5.5 rebounds per game or something like that? And I do think that's something where, okay, you're going to need to improve on the defensive rebounding. Not that he's bad at it, but I do think the offensive rebounding is elite. I don't know that the defensive rebounding is elite, but if you can get like a good defensive rebounding 4-man next to him, which makes me wonder, do we see a lot of 2 big basketball with like Bryson Tiller at the 4, Adkins at the 5? That'd be 2 guys with 7'2" plus wingspans at the 4 and 5. It would kind of help you out, because I don't know that Tiller is, known for being the best rebounding big man of this. Although I don't know, that's probably unfair. Tiller's averaging like double-digit rebounds at OTE. That would gobble up a lot of rebounds, though, if you have those guys at 4 and 5. So that would be certainly interesting if that's kind of something that you're doing. I actually think that Adkins has really nice touch. Like, that is one thing that, like, I think there's certain things that Flory, like it's good to know that with Flory, at the end of the day, even though these are kind of similar prospects and how their games come about, Flory was a higher rated prospect, and there's things that Flory is just to another level. But I do think Adkins actually has like more touch that you see there. You see in the free throw percentage, like really good free throw percentage for a center. And you see it in some highlights of like shots around the lane, like even hitting like floaters, the occasional jumper, that makes me think there's some potential there in what he could be as an offensive player, and in terms of even like shooting the occasional mid-range shot. He also runs the floor well in transition, which is kind of a continuation with what we're talking about here with Flory. He has some fun dunks, even some like one-handed slams off catches or oops or rebounds. Really good as a help side defender and shot blocker and roamer, where like he's really good at picking up, okay, they're about to do this. Like, I'm going to come over for my spot and I'm going to swat it away and help my guy on the defensive end. And it did feel like most of his hook shots and like post stuff were kind of tilting back as he shot it. I mean, maybe that's just because, okay, he's 6'9", he's not a 7-foot center, but I do wonder if that's something that, Self will coach out of him. But again, he showed, kind of good touch around the rim, which I think is certainly encouraging there. This is from Adam Finkelstein of 24/7 Sports. A long and athletic southpaw, Adkins now measures at 6'9" with Flory, or with shoes on, has a massive 7'2" wingspan and nearly 9-foot standing reach and huge hands. He runs the floor well, is a bouncy vertical athlete, and a major lob threat who can rise up for emphatic finishes. He's also a major shot blocker, or major shot blocking presence, 2.3 per game, with a wealth of defensive upside. And going back to the Flory thing, if I substituted Flory's name for Adkins in that write-up, you like if I didn't say Adkins, if I just said, right, I just opened today's show and went, a long and athletic southpaw, 6'9" with shoes, has a massive 7'2" wingspan, runs the floor well, bouncy vertical athlete, major lob threat, major shot blocking presence. All of those things, you would think that I was describing Flory Bidunga. Those are all identical, and it applies for Adkins as well. So that's why you're going to hear that comparison. Now, Finkelstein goes on to say this, and this is where I think it's a little bit different with Flory. The single biggest variable in Adkins' game is his motor. When he's fully engaged and committed to being a rim runner, shot blocker, and lob threat, he can control the paint on both ends of the floor. When he doesn't play with the necessary energy, that's when his production falls off. That feels like something where it's like, okay, Flory, it feels like always has that motor on. So maybe that's the big difference between the two players, because again, Flory was somebody who was like a 98 rated recruit, and I think Adkins is like a 95. So you're trying to figure out, okay, he's similar in how he plays, but why is Flory the higher rated prospect there? Now, Finkelstein also goes on to say, again, with 24/7 Sports, once his motor becomes a constant, there are secondary areas of improvement that could take his game to new levels as well. He's much more a play finisher than playmaker. He's just started to develop some footwork around the paint and a jump hook, but needs to continue getting stronger, raise his release point in the lane, improve his right hand and ability to put the ball on the floor when facing up. He also has a soft, natural touch, 73%, and may be able to space the floor both vertically and with his shooting eventually, but isn't yet consistent from long range, just 1 of 16 from 3. He's a more active rebounder on the offensive end, and has yet to fully embrace his significant defensive upside. But again, this sounds like to me a more raw version of Flory Bidunga. But I think the good news is, again, when you look at the Houston recruitment side, like Houston doesn't bring on people or big men, either one, that are going to settle with not having a good motor. So that to me almost like dispels that part of it. And the other thing is, when you look at the center position next year for KU, it could possibly have some other interesting pieces that, you know, you might not have to count on Adkins as much in year one as you did with Flory Bidunga. So let's get to what that future roster and future of the center position looks like for KU next. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by DoorDash. It is the weekend. Time to look back, crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Kansas, we're going to continue with the recruiting theme here. Bill Self has delivered in a big way here for Kansas. He's delivered 3 commitments over the last week for KU at this point in time. And just like Bill Self has delivered for Kansas, DoorDash delivers for Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Today's episode of the show is also brought to you by Peloton. That's right. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's the most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I have a Peloton at my house. It is great. You can really make it your own journey. There's a lot of different great trainers and classes that you can take that help you. If you just want to take an easy ride, you can do that and kind of stroll. You can even pull up sometimes I'll even go on there. You can pull up like Netflix, or you can pull up like sports games, like NBA games and stuff on there, and just watch while you're riding. I love my Peloton. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Again, KU getting another commit, this time Davion Adkins, the 4-star center. So you look at the roster now for 2026 to 2027. Taylen Kinney, Elmarco Jackson in the backcourt. You would think Cole Rosario maybe moves into that starting 3 spot. You got Jamari McDowell and Corbin Allen kind of behind him. We'll see what they can develop into. And obviously you never know who's going to transfer after a year, but this is just on paper right now. And then you have Samiz Calderon, who, could be a 3 or a 4. It's the big man spot that becomes very interesting. Now, first of all, I do think a lot of us are assuming that Flory Bidunga is going to have a big enough season and go pro. And that is my assumption right now. So I'm not like penciling him in to be back as a junior, but still at the same point in time, we are talking about a center in today's day and age where, spacing is so valuable that, and don't get me wrong, there are exceptions to this. Like you think of like a Clint Capella and those types of players who have very long careers in the NBA. But it's just like, what if NBA teams do go, hey, you know what? Flory is only like 6'8" without shoes, and he doesn't really have much to the offense or shooting. We'll take you in the early second. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to make more money back at Kansas. Again, I'm assuming he's going to go pro at the end of this year, but I don't think it's like a home run that I'm going to completely wipe that away. So there is a world where, he's a junior and just a baller for KU, and you have Adkins who can kind of learn along from him. You've got a sophomore Paul Mbia. You've got a redshirt sophomore Bryson Tiller, and where Adkins is, kind of playing sparingly among that group of players as a true freshman. But again, I think the idea is that Flory Bidunga is going to go pro. And then from that perspective, you wind up with Tiller, Mbia, and Adkins. And from there, we'll see this year. We'll have a year under the belt of Mbia and Tiller to kind of get an idea of like, are those guys going to be ready? Or is Adkins going to have a real chance to come in right away and be a starter? But I'll say this, even if Adkins doesn't come in right away and be a starter, there are minutes there certainly, because, even if Mbia looks good enough this year that you're going in next year going, yeah, we feel good about starting him. Is he going to be a 30-minute per game guy, or is he probably going to be a 20, 22, 25-minute per game guy at that point, right? And so there's a lot of minutes to be had there. And then with how you want to deploy Tiller, which could be more as a 4 than a 5, that does leave more of those minutes untouched. So I think Adkins is going to play a very big role as soon as he is a freshman at KU. And maybe he is kind of on that Flory Bidunga path where it's like, okay, he's a 2-and-done player. He's a possibly 3-and-done player. But if Mbia looks that good, then do you end up with a situation where you have like 2 or 3 years of those guys, kind of playing a 20-20 split where you feel good about? But that's the thing. You look at the future of the center position, it's all guys with long arms. Tiller a little different than these, but in terms of Mbia, Flory, and now Adkins, all rim running 5s. They're going to throw down dunks. They're going to get their blocks. They're going to get their offensive rebounds. Certainly seems like that's the style that Bill Self wants to continue recruiting to. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the show. See you next time with LOJ.